We're back. All right, folks, it's time for us to kind of catch up and all things Impact Wrestling. Let's jump into our show right now. What up, everybody? And we're back finally. It's been like a 2-week layoff, but I mean, we've been busy.
We've been busy.
Yeah. You know, we explain how life can get ahead of us. But I mean, last week we were on travel, and that's obviously nothing you can do about that. But it doesn't matter because we're back this week and we're here to talk about Impact Wrestling as usual. Our weekly Impact Wrestling review, hot topic show. Now, usually we have our hot topic, the one thing that we feel like was the most, exciting, newsworthy, buzzworthy thing of the week of Impact Wrestling. But shoot, we've been gone for 2 weeks, so we gotta play a little bit of catch-up game here.
Yes, we do.
So we're gonna talk about all the craziness that has happened, and try to push out about 20 to 30 minutes of discussion for you all, as I suggest all the time, because you never know when this episode is going to drop. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell. That way, you know, on Fridays when we will be going live. That way you can be a part of the conversation with us as we talk about Impact Wrestling. But as I said, a lot has happened. And so the focus of today, we're going to talk about the state of the champions within Impact Wrestling. We now know that Christian Cage is our Impact World Champion, and Deonna Purrazzo is having arguably the best year of any woman performer in the world. And she is your Knockouts champion. And, you know, not to take anything away from the tag division or anything from, I was about to say Josh Matthews. Josh Alexander. You know, that's my guy. So, like, you know, I had to plug him in somehow. But not to take away from Josh Alexander here, but like we want to talk about our two top champions. And I do think that, you know, Josh is having an amazing year as well, too.
He is, yes. I mean, I think to come out of Ultimate X, to come out of, you know, his past few challengers, they've really primed him up, hopefully to move him to that next level. But he's had an outstanding reign as X Division champion.
And I think a lot of people are like buzzing to see him work more people. And, you know, whether you slept on him before, he's definitely must see, and he just has solid matches no matter what he does. And I think that we will revisit him, because I feel like we can probably push out enough on him alone, because I'm a huge fan, and I think he's just getting started. And plus, some things I kind of want to talk about today, I feel like it's gonna kind of relate to him more so later than now. But let's talk about Christian Cage, who was the one to dethrone Kenny Omega. And not only that, he retired the TNA championship.
Yeah.
First off, I want to kind of throw at you is like, do you think Christian was the right person to beat Kenny? We'll start there.
Was he the right person? I can't say with a full heart no. I wish this was used to elevate someone else on the roster, and that it was actually he was beaten by someone who was actively on the roster. So that's a big tinge of that. But Christian Cage has history with Impact. You know, he's definitely a legend. So it does feel kind of nice that even if it's not with someone who's full-time with the company, it's someone who has a history and someone that the company respects and someone that, can kind of bridge this gap between the past and the present. And he did make it his intention that when he left WWE to pursue other ventures like AEW, his goal was to win championships. Now, he has not won an AEW championship, but it feels like, even though it's still kind of with someone outside of the company, it feels a little bit more warm and fuzzy because it's someone who has that lineage and respect for Impact. But in my gut, there's definitely a huge part of me that feels like it was wasted in not having someone on the active roster win it from Kenny.
Yeah, I mean, this was AEW booking AEW here. Mm-hmm. So, as much as
and they didn't even, it's not like they even had this title match on on Impact Television. This was on, Rampage. So it's not even like the belt could change or the belt changed hands on an Impact show.
Yeah. And I mean, like, thinking about the other competitors that went against Kenny, I thought Moose's story was good. I thought that Sami Callihan's was the best of the challengers. Yes. So
that's my gut.
Yeah.
That's my gut.
So I feel like, did it land on a notable person? Sure. But was I invested into this as much as I was to anything else? No. And I also felt like it was just pure AEW. Like, And like, it's not to say that I don't like AEW, it's to say that, like, as a fan of Impact, and if I'm just thinking Impact, not from a business standpoint, but just as a fan consumer, I'm just like, I would rather have seen it been somebody on their roster, like you said, or it truly benefiting them as a company. Let it be on their home turf. Let it be one of their, signed roster, or somebody who is as you said, active member, or somebody you're trying to elevate, and it just wasn't that. So I was a little bit kind of like, because, like, I mean, that was the big question: who was going to be the one to do it? And
we talked like whoever would be that person would be a made person. Their career could absolutely benefit from this. And go into what you were saying about the build up and stories with some of the other matches with Moose and Sami Callihan. There was no build up in this. It was literally, a week of build up, if that, the announcement, and then an interview, and that was it. So there was really no build up. This is really more of a mechanism to help promote their match at All Out than it was for, to have kind of more of this reign end, it feels like.
Yeah, I got something else for that too. Let me jump to Trent real quick with this question. Do I think Braun Strowman's going to show up at Bound for Glory? No, I don't think so. I think he goes back to WWE at some point. He's getting paid a lot of money, and considering that they're trimming fat, whether it's by talent or whether it's by the numbers on the books, he's a WWE guy. And if he goes anywhere, I see him going back. That's just my personal feeling. But to this, there's a couple of things here. I feel like Christian winning was a move strictly for AEW. I also feel like there was, probably backstage discussion as to, like, hey, we need to retire this TNA belt, or, Kenny's tired of holding it, and, it's not serving no purpose because we're actually not defending it. So, we got to get it on somebody that can retire it, and that it makes sense. That belt is very it's one of the most iconic belts.
Yeah, it's historic.
And you got to have the right person to do it. If Kenny would have retired the belt, like, oh my God, like I probably would have been done for, like,
it would have caused quite an uproar.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, well, Christian checks all the boxes and he's on our roster. I mean, Christian's thing, it was going to be somebody for that AEW roster,
I was going to say, though, that also makes it then feel like, how long-term was this planned out? Because at one point, there was speculation that they knew when the title was going to change. This had been planned out from quite a while. But again, due to the way that it was presented, and also events happening afterward, it makes it feel like this was more of a recent decision made, and it wasn't as planned out as maybe we've been led to believe.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just not I wasn't totally on board with it in regards to booking, but Christian as a champion, I'm liking it because I'm liking what he's doing in Impact.
Yes.
Which brings me to our next question. His first feud seems to be somebody that we've both been very high on, more so yourself, in saying that this is who you thought should have been the person to beat Kenny, and that's Ace Austin. So what do you feel about this now, Ace Austin and Christian?
Well, I can't be mad at that. Like I said, I thought Ace Austin would be a perfect opponent for Kenny Omega because he has shades of Kenny Omega, absolutely. And I think that this is a great, I mean, really, it's what I would have wanted. It's having an established star, your champion, put over someone newer. Will Ace Austin win the Impact World Championship? Who knows? It's hard to predict because of all the decisions that have been made and things that have happened. I could see this being somewhat of a short reign for Christian so that he can swing his focus back on AEW eventually. But I like this. This is what I wanted from day one as to what this, championship reign should be. And I mean, again, you think about the story, Ace Austin has only been with the company a few years and his impact has been made where, Christian's been in and out of this company for over a decade. And, I think for Ace Austin, it would be a huge feather in his cap to not only beat, a legend like Christian, but to win the world championship from him. And have the era of Ace Austin. So I'm digging this. I like it. I think that there's a lot of great foils in this. You have, some unpredictable elements still too, like Madman Fulton. But I'm a fan of this story. I'm good with it.
Okay. Let's talk about Deonna Purrazzo for a minute. I think it's without a doubt that she's having the best run of her career. And I really feel very confident that she's having the best run this year of all women in professional wrestling. I think there's not even.
It's hard to argue that.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on everything she's been doing? I mean, the big thing we talked about, was the match at AAA, and I feel very confident in my booking then, and I'm seeing how it's playing out now, is that you wanted to make that champion versus champion match feel big. That night felt big in regards to just Triple Mania AAA putting on their biggest show in Triple Mania, and just all the matches, especially when you got to the championship matches, all the matches felt big stakes. And Deonna winning was a huge knock or a huge banner, a huge plaque on her banner, or a huge plaque on her wall, a banner above all. And we talked about how she had to fill in the gap between Slammiversary and that. And then we talked about what was to come next, and everything is coming to fruition. You got the Melina thing feud going on. You got her working NWA. You got the Mickie James thing still there.
Yeah.
She's working very notable women in the business. And then she's working everywhere. The Indies, Impact, NWA, wherever she can get a match at, she's going. So ultimately, what is your thoughts about her run? What do you see next for her? And when does this hype train end?
I know. So now that we've already seen that hype train end with Kenny, it's almost thinking, okay, what's next? Who beats Deonna? Because you're absolutely right. She is on a huge wave of success. She is now a double champion as the AAA Reina de Reinas champion, which again was very infamously held by Taya when she was also Knockouts and AAA Reina de Reinas champion. So there's definitely shades of that. And now on top of that, she's working NWA Empower that's scheduled for this weekend against Melina. There's implications that she may go into a further storyline with Mickie James, which I think would be great. So, and she is, going out in the independents as well, going to independent promotions across the US, as, the Impact Knockouts champion. So it's also a way to spread that message of Impact Wrestling to, fans all over the United States. And even winning Homecoming, that whole pay-per-view event was a great setup for her. And I don't know, to be honest, I don't know who is going to beat her. I feel like if someone's going to beat her, they're not in the company right now. It may be someone they bring in, and that's the person they elevate. But I can't look at anyone currently right now on the roster and say that's going to be the person that beats Dionna, because to be honest, I don't. She's either already beaten them, or it may not make sense for her to lose. So I do think that she's had some great chemistry with Melina, and Melina's done some of her best work because of Dionna. And I think that's something too that's very undervalued from Dionna, is that she's brought some of the best out of her competitors, whether that's Rosemary, whether that's Kimberly, whether that is Su Yung, whether that be, anyone, even I think Taryn Terrell, like she does, so her presence, but also the way that she works in the ring, the way that, she makes it a very believable match with the other person on the opposite side. I think that's too why she's such a hot commodity, is that she can make whoever she's in the ring with look fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at this point now, winning, losing, she's hot, and that is all that matters. Is that she's best for business wherever she goes. Aiden, formerly known as Aiden English, the Drama King, is relevant because of her.
Yeah.
And and not to say that he couldn't do something without her. It's to say that him being matched with her has helped in any match that she's involved with. It helps, and I think that beyond that, when I start to think, well, who's the next hottest person? I was, well, maybe Thunder Rosa, who she beat. So it's just like,
yeah, exactly. I feel like it's someone who's not there yet, someone that, we haven't seen. There's even just on the independent scene, I know that she is doing a show sometime in the next month, and it's for the Impact Knockouts Championship against Mercedes Martinez. Like stuff like that is still flying under the radar too.
Yeah.
And I think, man, if that somehow got escalated to Impact and on TV, that would be a ridiculous view, So the world is her oyster. There's so much happening right now of just talent that is coming through, new talent, established talent that is now making their way back onto the independent scene. And I think it's also, again, a feather in Impact's cap of taking a chance on her, and really letting her ride this wave out, having the confidence in her ability and her work rate, and still tweaking her character, but modifying, her entourage, also still keeping a bit of that heel tone, that she's always going to need help, that she's not doing it alone. And once her alliance with Kimberly and Susan ended up flailing, there she was already ready to pick up the next person. And at that point too, you're right, with Matthew, it's been more like he's benefited way more from associating with her than she has with him. And that's a rare thing for a man to get some more oomph in his career with an associated with a woman than and vice versa. So I think that's too a big just a clue as to, how the value that they put in her, but also, really the star power. She is one of the biggest stars in the entire company.
Yeah, I can't even argue that. So what's next? What's next for her then? Like, I mean, she's not running the belt collector gimmick, but like, does she go after more championships, and then where? And then there's been talks that the her versus Brittany Baker thing happened. Here's what I don't like about that, because when AEW's evolved, it's AEW booking, as we've seen in AAA.
Everything else.
Everything else. So I don't want it to happen. But it could be interesting. But where else does she go? I mean, yes, the NWA thing gets a little bit intriguing after a while. Whoever comes out of the later Hirsch and Camille match.
But I also I don't see the NWA doing anything to jeopardize that women's championship. You know, Thunder Rosa had a really great reign, and Camille, they're really trying to establish as a strong champion. So to me, it doesn't make sense because at the end of the day, you know, I truly wouldn't think that Impact would vouch or permit, you know, her to not win, or maybe they would, you know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be title versus title, even though that would be interesting. But you know, a win, a Camille winning over Deonna would be huge for Camille, you know. But I do think that it's very strategic the way that they set things up for Empower. That Camille's doing her own match against Layla Hirsch, you know. Deonna Purrazzo is having her own match against Melina. Mickie James is the tie-in. So I do feel like what the immediate next thing is Mickie James.
Yeah.
I do feel like that is what we're going to see next. And I think it would be a great feud. And we talked about this at Slammiversary as, you know, someone who I think would, you know, benefit, how she would benefit from a feud, someone who already has a long history and Impact. And Mickie James is not going to lose anything if she loses.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's just champion versus champion, if it's not for the title, I still think it's intriguing.
Oh yeah.
And I think, you know, wherever Deonna goes is going to get attention. And if you also want to build Camille, then you need to put her in high profile matches because she's been so protected in NWA. We haven't seen her around. So, you know, the Layla Hirsch thing is okay, but they're not really promoting it, especially for Layla Hirsch, to even make it seem like she's a formidable opponent. Especially since you're playing a David versus Goliath card here, which I don't know if anybody knows anything. We all know that, I don't know, David won.
Yes, and Goliath is your champion that you're trying to build.
Exactly.
So yeah, the story's a little, you know, but you're right. As far as in order for Camille to be a little bit more legitimized, she needs to go up against stronger competition. And I think that would suit her very well to be in a match with Deonna. And you know, I think too with NWA Empower, they're really bringing out a huge list of independent talent that really, you know, are very much more localized or have flown under the radar. So I think really the effects of what we're going to see after Empower and what this means for the landscape of women's wrestling. I think Empower is going to have play a bigger role in the future of women's wrestling than we think. It's not this. It's a one-off show as far as, yes, it's a women's show, but what happens with all of these women after the show, that's what is going to be the most interesting.
Empower feels totally different for me. This is not, it doesn't feel like a one-off, and it doesn't feel like a special attraction, and it doesn't feel like a compilation prize for the women to say, oh, well, here's something for you all. It feels like something that has a lot of heart, substance, passion behind it. That it's only going to get better and better over time. And I really do trust Mickie James. And like, to be honest, like as much as what Mickie James is doing right now, when I go back and look at some of like the documentaries she's done, and especially in WWE, and the way how she speaks about what she wants to do for women, knowing that this has truly documented in her past of something she wanted to do, and now she gets the opportunity to do it, I strongly have a lot of confidence that this is just the first step. So like, there's gonna be some things kinks to work out, but it's gonna get better and better. And even with them just recently signing, you know, Christy James to it, who was lobbying to be a part of this, it makes me think that like she has an eye out to what's out there and trying to do her best to service everything.
They really have one of the largest variety of women on this card, you know. I mean, they even have now a triple threat match of 3 different women from 3 different companies, with Diamante representing AEW, Chick Tormenta representing AAA, and Kylie Ray, who had been announced for the show to begin with. You have the Tag Team Tournament Cup. You got, you know, the Invitational. You have the 2 championship matches, that and a lot more too. So, I mean, and again, with the roster that they have, they really did pluck, you know, women from all over. Some that are a lot more well-known, some that have maybe kind of flown under the radar. But I think that's a beautiful thing too, is that, and sometimes when you have these types of events, you kind of can predict who's going to be reached out to, who's going to come to the plate. But this
Yeah.
one really did feel like they had, they really did their fine research, and they really did some in-depth digging to find people that maybe fans are not as familiar with, but they will be.
Yeah.
And I think that platform is great. And if that can then, spread into Impact, that will eventually need to kind of bolster that knockouts division again. It's now becoming a feeder, and that's a beautiful thing. And if there is more of a talent exchange as well, where we do see more NWA talent on Impact, which is a whole other history lesson. That we talk about forbidden doors, one that we didn't think we'd see open again. It's a big deal, and a lot of it seems due to Mickie James's work.
Yeah, we're talking about Impact, but I got to give NWA the resilience to survive during the pandemic, because I definitely, with them, I can't even think of his name right now, but the other person who was running alongside of Billy Corgan, who was stepped down from his position, with them in the style of production that they ran and not actually running during the pandemic because they wanted to be able to do so with fans being in there. To them getting to this point now, I mean, Power was one of the best shows at a point.
Yeah,
and then they got the deal, and then to this point now they're doing good. And I think the reason why this ties into what we're talking about is because as much as Mickie James means to all of women's wrestling, they also are featuring Deonna Purrazzo of Impact, who is the hottest right now in the business, and she is a adequate part in what's going forward with this, which is open door thing.
Yes. And again, like that, she is part of Impact history. She's been making her presence known as of late. And again, that could be what is that next thing for Deonna Purrazzo is Mickie James. And that's that next big hurdle for her. And again, I see Deonna continuing to pass with flying colors. I don't think the person that's going to dethrone her has been presented yet, but that person is out there, and maybe it's someone that we're going to see at Empower this week, or maybe it's someone else. Maybe, who knows? But I think that's one thing that Impact Wrestling still has done very well and has done for years, and still also flies under the radar is, the knockouts division in women's wrestling. And I like how they don't always do what is the super obvious. And I like, especially too, just a side note that we saw at Emergence, but mixed tag wrestling, we saw that, and that's been something that Impact has done. And you've been saying that for a while, push the fact that you have men and women in the ring at the same time. It doesn't feel like a feature, doesn't feel like, hey, look at me, look what we're doing, though we don't see it often. When it's done very well. And Impact is one of the only North American televised companies that does that. And there is a fan base for it. So I think that is something too they need to continue to explore, and maybe, think about doing a little bit more frequently.
Yeah. Since we're going to be coming up on our time, I want to throw the last question to you, and that's the forbidden door thing. We've been very critical about how Impact and the AEW thing has been working, but now we got NWA in play, and then there's going to be a lot more people in play. New Japan, yes, obviously is here, but we're going to actually see how this makes sense come Bound for Glory, since they really seem to be promoting that to be some form of an inter-promotional show on Impact territory. So quickly, I want to ask you, what is your thoughts about Impact's open door thing, and where do they sit with this?
Well, I think that I personally like it. I think that the fans win. I think that the company wins when it's done in a way that makes it feel like an equal partnership, or that both entities are winning. I think that's been the challenge with the AEW partnership. It's felt very one-sided, and that the door only goes one way, where AEW is more than welcome to come through, but Impact has not been able to break through AEW television because they're not New Japan. AEW has a hard-on for New Japan. Let's call us, it is what it is. And I don't know what the inner depths of workings are, but it does seem very unfair the way that they treat, AEW's treated their partnerships with New Japan and with Impact very, very differently. Yeah. However, what I do think is that, that's something Impact has done for quite some time. We're seeing some of that resurgence of the AAA partnership with Deonna Purrazzo, and kind of a spoiler alert, Laredo Kid was on their series, their most recent tapings, who is a AAA superstar. So we're starting to see some of that, which they've plugged. New Japan has continued to have a presence, maybe not a huge presence, I'd say New Japan mid-card presence, but I still feel like that's a lucrative partnership for both, because then you get to bring in people from New Japan that maybe you don't necessarily see as much or don't have as much screen time on New Japan television to an American audience, and it helps fill some of the card and storylines on the Impact side. And with the NWA, I have to say, I didn't think we would see this again. Once that partnership disintegrated years ago, it just didn't seem like it was going to come back around, but it has. And there's a lot of great tradition and history tied between the two. And if they can kind of start over, who knows? I think NWA needs it more than Impact, to be honest, because NWA did lose some traction because of the pandemic. So being able to work with Impact that has that strong weekly television presence, and just the popularity that it does have, is going to help bring NWA back up, and vice versa. Because Impact is doing something different, and they're bringing out some of these more dream matches and dream scenarios that you don't get to see anywhere else. So I feel like as long as these partnerships are becoming more mutually beneficial and it's not just one-sided, I think that a lot of people win in this.
Yeah, and that's the thing, mutually beneficial, and that's where Impact needs to be a little bit more strategical about that going forward. I again, to the day, I still don't understand how the Impact thing works. I mean, the AEW thing works.
No, you don't know. We're not here to say that we do, but it's kind of strange.
Yeah, but then I look at the NWA thing, and I'm like, I'm digging that.
Yeah,
The AAA thing, I'm digging that.
Right,
New Japan thing, I'm digging that. And you see how it works, as you stated. Some people say, hey, we need to get American territory, meaning that they want to get the American consumers to watch their product in Japan, in Mexico, what it may be, or NWA stating that we're here. We're still here. Check us out still. They already set up the infrastructure with a TV deal or and with Fight and whatnot. So there's ways to watch it, but they got to remind people that we're also here, because while they had the momentum, it went away because of the pandemic. And so they had the soft reset. And while, again, Impact shows why they're the most resilient brand out there, it makes sense to have a conversation with them and say, well, what are you all doing to stay afloat? Well, how can we be a part of this? Oh, your doors are open. Cool. Let's have a conversation. And we're getting talent matches and all sorts of things that we could have just never imagined without it being labeled as open door. So that's just my thing. But on that note, I think that'll do it for us this week, folks. Let us know your comments about our champions, Deonna Purrazzo and Christian Cage. What's your thoughts about them? Where would you like to see them feud? Where and who would you like to see them feud with next? And as always, folks, totally subscribe, notification bell, and join us each and every week as we talk Impact Wrestling. That'll do it for us this week. Miranda, it's a pleasure. Also, it was cool to see you last weekend in Vegas for all the festivities. And I'll be seeing you soon, and we'll be back next week, folks. Thank y'all for tuning in.